Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to another interview on the costumeco channel. And today I'm so delighted to have my next guest. Her name is Leslie Kavanagh. She is the costume designer for the new show on Amazon Prime called Motorheads. And Leslie, by the way, congratulations on this show. It's so fun. I loved it.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear it. It was really fun to make.
Yeah, and I'm really been getting a lot more into contemporary design. So it's really nice to be able to meet designers who work into contemporary. Although you do all kinds of things, so we'll learn a little bit more about you as well. And of course, I have to do a shout out to you because you're from Canada. You're in Toronto, Canada. So yay, Canada representing.
Yeah.
We have such a wonderful team of talented designers and craftspeople in this country. So it's always great to feature you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is. We have amazing talent here. 100%.
So before we get started, I thought we could learn a little bit about you. And I know you're a Handmaid's Tale designer as well, but did you want to tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into costumes?
Sure. I did go to theater school for a spill, and I got exposed more to film and television through my sister, who is a costume designer here in the city as well. And that was kind of how I got introduced to film and television theater, and film and television, while fundamentally same, very different in execution. So if you're from a theater background and haven't really done film or television and you come and do it, you're like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And it's the same thing if you've never done theater and you come from a film and television background, you step into theater, you're like, oh my gosh, how do these people do this? So I had my exposure that way. I was really lucky that when I decided to continue to pursue the costume side of things, it was a very busy time here in Toronto, and there was a lot of MOWs, movies of the week, for those of you that don't know what that is, and they were just churning them out and churning them out, and so there was a lot of work. It was at a very busy time, and I was able to get a lot of on-the-job training because there wasn't really a lot of, I guess I would say, practical type experience or schools or anywhere to get that type of practical sort of training or exposure or being right in the trenches of it all. There's a few more things now than there were then, and that's just what happened. And luckily, I think people liked me. I was a hard worker, so then I got taken to another project and you get more experience and you work with more people, so you see how it's done a different way. And I was just really, really lucky to be able to work my way up from being a costume assistant to working with background. I worked in the breakdown room, aging and distressing. I did buying. I was a truck costumer. I was a set supervisor on films for a long time. Then I went into ACDing, and now I'm a costume designer.
That's I always do a shout out to the costume breakdown team because they're the unsung heroes, I always say.
Yep.
And it's sort of the work that most people won't ever notice, which is a good thing, I think. But yeah, so, and not an unusual story, Leslie. When I talk to other designers, it's very common to start out, especially people who are asking me, how do you get into the business? So it's always great to start and work your way up and learn the ropes that way.
Yeah, it is. It is. You get a lot of what I like to call foundational training and understanding of what it is. And when you understand, all the departmental, so costumes is kind of like an umbrella, right? We have all these spokes of different things. We have the breakdown, we have sewing, we have background. We do so many different things within the costume department that having a really good working knowledge and understanding of what each position is only helps you to excel at wherever you want to specialize. For me, my whole goal was always to just be a completely well-rounded costumer, because when I was getting into the industry, it wasn't always as busy. And so you had to stay really current and relevant to be able to get what jobs were available. It's changed a little bit now. Toronto is booming, they call it Hollywood North, blah, blah, blah. And so we do have a lot more work and there's a lot more opportunity. But when I was starting out, it wasn't quite as busy like that. We would have big spills of busyness and then dry spells. And so in order to, sort of be at the top of the pile of pickings, if you will, you had to be really well-rounded.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. And now, so I know you know you have another big show, and you're going to be moving on to another show. But before we do that, we're going to talk about Motorheads. That's what we're here to talk about, which is such a fun show. So tell me how you got involved in Motorheads.
So Motorheads was coming to Toronto, and I got an interview. I'm assuming that they saw my resume and just sort of liked what they saw. And then I got an interview, and I was talking with Johnny Norris, who was the creator, showrunner, and writer, and Jason Seagraves, who was our main producer. And they were the people that interviewed me. And what normally happens with a costume designer is you get a script or a treatment, depending on how secretive the show is and what the components are. And you get to read that and sort of either produce a mood board. Sometimes they'll tell you they just want to meet you first before they, go further with candidates or whatever. And I got the script. They sent me the first two scripts, actually. And honestly, I was just hooked. I was like, I need more scripts. Whether I get this job or not, I now need to know what happens. Like, I will be watching this show, even if I don't get the job, because now I want to know. That's how much it hooked me right from the very beginning. I was invested in the characters and what was happening right away. And I think when I went into the interview, it just really showed. I had done a big, presentation board of characters. I broke down some of the characters and an overall feeling for the town of Ironwood that the story takes place in. And I just was so, I think, excited. And that was infectious to them, because I do remember Johnny Norris was kind of great. I remember him telling me, I don't even have to answer or ask you any questions, because you've already answered all the questions I wanted to ask you with your descriptives and what you were, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, great. And then we just ended up having, after the initial talking about the script. So what they did was they told me a little bit about the project and what they were thinking. And they said, we'd like to hear your thoughts on it. And so from there, it was just like it all just came. I was like, I couldn't stop talking about it. I was like, oh my gosh. And I think this, and I think that. And I don't know if this is happening, but I want to know. If you want to send me script 3, I'll let you know. And I told them, I said, I just want more scripts. So I think it was just a really natural, connection, I guess I would say, between what they were looking for and my excitement for the project.
Well, I can feel your infectiousness here, and I'm kind of like that too. When I glob onto something, I'm just like, okay, I'm like, I have to know everything about it. It probably wasn't even cast at the time when you were reading the script, so you
Yeah.
were sort of having to create these thoughts in your mind, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
So with that in mind, so how did you come up with the original, the look of it? It's supposed to be sort of in a Rust Belt part of the United States. Like for us, our Canadian viewers, we don't really have a Rust Belt. But so tell us a little bit about how you came up with the original concept for some of the costumes.
In all honesty, again, the script is your guide, right? And Johnny had written his words, his descriptives, you feel things just reading it. It was amazing. It was actually really amazing. And that's what happened to me. I was just getting visuals by reading this story. And for me, there were some key components about some of the characters that I felt we really needed to explore and incorporate. Particularly, we have a family that the mother, Sam, is from Ironwood. She grew up there and left, as a teenager at 17, 18 years old, and went to New York. And then she's coming back with her twin kids, who are now, teenagers. They're like 16. And so I could picture what they would look like coming from a big metropolis into small town USA, where everything is sort of, I basically, I kind of have these catchphrases my crew knows. I'm always like saying that things have babies. And I was always like, my inspiration was kind of like if Footloose and, Sex and the City had a baby, like, what is that? Do you know what I mean? Like, where they're bringing a lot of they're bringing a whole different culture into a small town where, there's nothing wrong with a small town. Everyone that's lives there, just that's their life. So it's all great. But people that are coming from the outside, from a big bustling metropolis like New York City, and they're like, what is this place? So it was kind of like me trying to marry things like that and bring things into that. And that was a really important part that I wanted to show visually a distinctive difference between that family and everybody else. But I'm not trying, my whole goal wasn't to make Ironwood look they talk about it as it's a dying town, and the things that used to make it very vibrant weren't there, and how did they bring vibrancy back to the city, and why do people, or town, why do people stay there, and what's the allure? So I didn't want to make the people there look, down and out or anything like that. I just wanted it to give a very different flavor against city slickers, if you will.
Thank you for that answer. And then regarding, so I was mentioning to you earlier, we have this, this contrast between, I don't know, some of them are kind of one percenters, and then you have the ones who come from Brooklyn, New York, like we've got Samantha Zach and Caitlin Torres. So yeah, you've got that Brooklyn look, and then married with this sort of Rust Belt look. So how did you sort of contrast their two different looks?
So obviously using color was a really great way, like much more vibrancy. I also wanted to have a lot more graphic branding. And when I say branding for Zach, he's like, when we got the scripts, he was like sort of a skate. His descriptive was like, he was a skateboarder kid that's kind of getting into trouble now, sort of starting to hang with the wrong crowd. That's part of why the mom wants to bring them back. Then we have Caitlin, his twin sister, who's more sort of, she is a motorhead, right? She's through and through. Like she's a car junkie. She's mechanics. I love that they flipped the roles of what is stereotypically the male female role, and they made the girl much more as the mechanic side, the doer, the builder, and they made Zach, the character of Zach, kind of the face of the team, if you will. And so I did really love that aspect of it as well. And so for me, I wanted to use brands that were a little bit off brand for him, because in New York, that's what it is. The cool kids, if you know, and so they're not wearing the mall clothes necessarily. They're wearing like street brands. And so we were trying to do that, but it's also tricky because with clearance issues and stuff, you're trying to work. So you're trying to figure out what does that look like for them, and using brighter, bolder colors and patterns to give a visual distinction. And then our lovely Ironwood Town people, not that they're not fun and lively and have a great personality in their look, but I steered more to making it believable. Like they are more mall kids. Like that's what they have access to. They don't have the same access to off brands or whatever. Our only other character really was Alicia. She came from a very wealthy family. Her dad, owned Bandit Industries, which was like taking over the town, and like big sort of, it was a big, I think the background for him is he's a very big technology guru. And she was the only one that we did some other stuff with, because she had access to be going. Like there's things where they talked about how her parents were on a trip to Europe, how her parents were in California, like different things. So she would have a little bit more access to other things than just what's in Ironwood, if you will. And just sort of using different patterns, like a lot more plaids, things like a little bit different textures and color tones for the town of Ironwood versus our family from New York.
Yeah, actually, I was noticing like Zach on the poster is wearing one of the very bright colored shirts. I think it's purpley or blue kind of thing. So his colors are always really popping. Every morning he would come into the garage. I'd be like, oh, what's Zach going to be wearing now?
Purple is actually Michael Cimino, who plays Zach. Purple's one of his favorite colors, and he looks just delicious in it.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
That, and it was sort of funny because purple's a tough color, and it's often a no-no for a lot of shows. People are like, oh, purple, and I really wasn't sure that they were going to go for it, but I was pushing it, and luckily they loved it, and it came to life, and obviously it looks so great on him. So I was happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So hey, were there any like real life inspirations that you used, in pop culture or something as inspiration for the show?
Well, for Logan Maddox, Uncle Logan.
Yes.
By Ryan Phillippe.
Right. Yeah, Ryan Phillippe. And also I saw in the credits that I think his son is in the show.
His son sure is. He plays Christian Maddox in the film.
Oh, wow.
So it was really, really great because, of course, they do look alike because they're.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so that was kind of a really fun thing and kind of special for them to be working together in this capacity. So that was really great. Also, what a nice kid. My goodness.
Oh, that's so nice. That's always lovely to hear.
Just lovely. So for him, his inspiration for me really was, I took a lot from Paul Newman, like just as he's like unassumingly cool, and doesn't have a big wardrobe. He doesn't have a big closet. He is just effortlessly cool, has a vibe. you know, my whole sort of one of the pitches I said for his character that was important to me is like he was very worn in, not worn out. And meaning like everything of his, he's owned, like he's got his favorite boots, he's got his favorite shirt, and it's his favorite jeans. So everything just molds perfectly and fits him in a way that just gives that really cool presence without trying to be cool. Like he's not trying to be cool, he just is. So that was really probably one of my, I guess, real life inspirations would have been for his character for sure would be Paul Newman because he's also uber cool.
What is it he's always saying? Vintage. Like, you know, people are calling things old. No, it's not old. It's vintage because he has this
Yeah,
real
he's lying.
appreciation for classic
Yeah,
things. All of his clothes feel very classic. Like he might have had them in his closet for a long time, but
yeah,
because they're so good quality, they would have lasted a long time compared to all of our fast fashion that we have nowadays.
correct. Yeah.
So now where did you shop most of the shows? By the way, I want to tell you before, this is just a fun little thing, that there's this thing called Shop Your TV, I believe, and they've already got a bunch of the clothes from your show on there.
Oh my God, I love it. I
It's
love
so
it.
fun.
That's
I
awesome.
go there all the time because if I'm doing a show, I always want to see where things come from. So yeah, just so if people want to, you know, find some of the outfits that you have in the show, they're on there. But yeah, so where did you find most of the clothes? Did you go to the mall?
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a big component of mall shopping for sure. I did try to source out some boutique stuff. We did order some stuff in, obviously, from New York because I wanted to deal with some brands that we don't have here. I was also, my good friends at Carhartt. Hi, Donovan. They were really great with me because it was kind of that. And then the Carhartt WIP line, the work in progress line, is really fun and funky. And a lot of people in New York, Brooklyn, all the Bronx, all that. That's a very sort of streetwear line. And they were really great because they have really cool graphics and that's all individual artists that come together and do that. So that was fun. I didn't get to do as much building on this show. We did a little bit here and there that I like, but we did a lot more of augmenting. So taking stuff and reworking it, taking sleeves off one jacket and adding a different sleeve to make the coat a little bit more unique, or adding, appliques and doing things of that nature. So we sort of got things from all around. I really do, when I'm shooting here in Toronto, obviously I love to stay local and just, go to local boutiques, and we have relationships with some people that are able to work with us, and that was basically what I would say was the most of it was here in and around Toronto, your local malls.
Great. Do you go to Kensington Market at all, or do you? Is that one of your little
we,
places that you like to go? Gadabout.
we do.
Oh,
I mean, who doesn't
I'm
like
going to shout her out.
who doesn't
She's
love
one of my favorites.
Gadabout is great for us. We love
Yeah.
Gadabout. Kensington, a lot of my student, we do a lot of student. I work a lot with Tom's place in there. Like, I mean,
Oh
I
yeah, yeah. Tom's
spread the
Slice.
love.
Right.
We do spread the love and try to
Mhm.
make sure we're taking care of all of our merchants. That's one thing I would say a lot of Canadian costume designers are so amazing at doing. And yeah, so just kind of here, there, and everywhere, I guess.
Also, the accessories are really great too. You've got lots of really cool accessories, so that would have been fun, I'm sure, right? Especially with Samantha, she's sort of seems to be really into like all kinds of different little details. And now, oh, by the way, I don't have this in the questions. Did you want to tell me a little bit about the dance? Like, okay, first off, I don't want to get into spoilers here too much, but there's a really great theme for the dance, and that I absolutely love that they designed. And so, when you were coming up with the outfits that everyone was going to wear, did you keep that in mind, that you're going to have this sort of dystopian backdrop?
So no, so we had a big discussion about that. So when they
Mhm.
were talking about what the prom, the homecoming, or whatever you want to call it was going to be, and we knew what the backstory of, because Marcel's character and Brooke are art students in the show. And so it's part of their class that helps put together the whole dance. And they had to come up with a theme and they had to execute it. And so when we were talking about what it was, I was just like, ooh, post-apocalyptic, like I'm into this. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Pump the brakes there, Leslie. We're not doing it in their clothing. We want to make sure that it's still a homecoming and a prom. So I was like, oh, okay. But what I really wanted to do was make sure that this was such an amazing opportunity to really shine and highlight each character's personality on what their outfit would be. And they're all so very different, yet so perfectly balanced. It was so fun to do. I have to say, that was like one that and like um the Firefly fun with I'm like when I'm trying to think like what are they were all fun because they're all so different. There were so many things happening, but White Knuckle
Yeah,
Run
I
was
was
a really
like,
fun
I'd
one.
love to live in this town. There always seems to be something going on.
Yeah,
Like,
it's very
I'm
bustling.
just saying because I used to live in a small town and I'm like, it would be boring. So it's
Well,
like this
this
town has actually
dying
got lots
town,
of I mean, they do have to sometimes kind of go outside of town to find something to do, but there's always something really cool going on, you know?
I loved it. For this dying town, there
Mm.
was always something really interesting, and I loved the concept of what it was. Is that it's always about the community coming together, which I thought was really cool. Like I love that they were really, showcasing that. If you think this show has no sex, no drugs, no alcohol, no swearing, like it's really a
I didn't even
human
think about
happy.
that. It's actually a fairly wholesome show.
Yeah,
There
but
is some
I mean,
crime.
there is
There's some
some
crime.
some small crime, and
Yeah.
okay, some street racing, yes,
Yeah.
but
By the way, I didn't ask you when I was getting into the color with you, I didn't ask like the cars are so colorful. So did you also sort of have to juxtapose, I don't know what the word is, juxtapose, I can't say the word.
yeah,
Juxtapose the outfits against the cars. So like you've got purple cars and yellow cars and red cars. Did you have to keep that in mind with the cars?
so that was something that was a little bit evolving. We knew what unbeaten was going to be. Like that was
Mhm.
always the descriptive, and we always knew what the colors of the unbeaten were, and we always knew about in the flashback that Darren Bowers his car was red. Like we knew a couple of key colors, and Harris Bowers, the young boy, like this, of the new generation. I knew his Porsche was going to be a specific blue. So Harris really his colors would never conflict with his car. Uh, I didn't really have anybody in the bright yellows of the unbeaten, so it was okay because that car was such a big piece of the show that there really was no competing with that. So that part was fine. But as other people were coming in and we were deciding, the production designer and the picture card people were deciding what the cars would be and the directors are picking what they like and how that works. Then I would sort of make sure that the costumes were not competing for sure.
Yeah, but I love that. Actually, I love how there was so much color because there's a lot of shows now that they use so many filters and everything, and it was really nice to just have all of this color pop on a show, right? That must have been a nice sort of change for you.
It was actually really exciting because it's
Yeah.
true, like things are very muted, things are very um like you say with filters with everything, but also
Mm.
people I'm not afraid of color. I never have been as a designer. I love it. I think it's great. And this is a very, it's a show through a very youthful lens. And so I really wanted to showcase that. And I think that kids do love color and trends and different silhouettes and, crop tops or shorts or this or that. That's just real, like blending it all together. And as for me, it's always about, and I think a lot of costume designers would probably say, is that as long as you're always balancing everything, and that includes with your background groups and your background performers to make sure that nothing, it's not just like it's a smack of color in the face, is that everything was so balanced in how I tried to make sure each character, complemented everything. It brings it together and it doesn't seem like it's, an a basket of an Easter egg
Yeah.
color. It
Yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
feel
No,
a
it never felt like
crayon
that at
box,
all. I didn't mention this earlier, but it feels very grounded. It felt very grounded and real, you know?
Thank you.
So, now we were talking about this earlier. I know you were shooting in around like Hamilton and what was the town that you were shooting in? It was such a cute little town.
We had a lot. We had a bunch of different locations
Oh,
because
okay.
yeah, we did all over. But the main iron, so the big bridge scene, that was
Mhm.
London, Ontario, where they do
Oh,
the
no way.
yeah.
Okay.
And we went there just for that
Mhm.
because it had to have a certain type of bridge that fit the aesthetic of what they were looking for, but that also had real water running under it, even though the whole water sequence were in tanks in a studio because we couldn't
Yeah.
use that water because it wasn't deep enough for the jump and everything. But it had the visual that they wanted. But Paris, Ontario was the main um, ironwood town and the main
Sure.
city of everything. So Paris, we spent a lot of time in Paris. We did do some stuff in Hamilton. We were in and around Caledon area for some of the Alicia, her home was out there. We did some of the horse riding stuff out there. So we definitely had lots of locations in and around the city of Toronto.
Yeah, it kind of was like, "Oh, this is really like a lovely, like, tour of Ontario, Southern Ontario."
Yep. Yep.
Um, so now, okay, so speaking of that, because you're in Canada, I don't know what time of the year you were shooting. Like, how did weather affect you? Like how you could dress people? Like, was it cold? Like, was it hot? Like, how did that work?
So when we started prepping the show, we started in early spring, so like March. And obviously, as we know here in Toronto, the weather's a bit dodgy.
Mhm.
And so we started prepping. But as we were gearing up to shoot, I have to say one thing that was, I would say, one of the curses of Motorheads, there wasn't many, but was the weather. When we shot the show, it was the summer of rain. We just had so much rain. And it became, there was times where it was dangerous because we're doing a
Mhm.
lot of racing and you can't be doing it on when the roads are too wet, for spin outs and everything. And even though we had lots of amazing stunt players and everything else, it just became a problem. And I remember we were shooting this one scene. It was an outdoor party. It was supposed to be an outdoor party, I should say, for at Alicia's house after the first race where Zach goes and sees the first car race. And then he gets invited back to Alicia's for her after party. And that
With
night, it was,
with the one where the motorcycle ends up in the
yeah, where they
water.
throw
Yeah,
Curtis. Yeah, they put
yeah,
poor old Curtis's homemade bike
I
and
know.
into the like lake. What jerks!
Yeah, I
And
know. Always.
and so that night it was like major thunder and lightning storms. They had to try to figure it all out because it was all beautifully set dressed and everything was all for outside for this party. And then the rain, it was torrential rain, and they had to figure out how do you get all this inside. The house hadn't been fully prepped for that because we weren't supposed to be going into the house at the time. So that was, I would say that the weather was friend and foe. Like we had so many amazing days where we got beautiful weather into the summer and you can really see it. You can really pick it up on the warmth and it's like you can feel the warmth in the air. But then we
Mhm.
had some of those days where the cast, it was so cold because the rain had come in, but then they're trying to look like it's warm weather. So that was definitely the weather, I'd say, was a really big challenge for us on that show, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then also you had to deal with stunts as well. So you would have had to have had a lot of multiples and doubles and everything, I'm sure, for the costumes?
Yeah. So, you know, we had sort of mentioned this earlier, so it might be a bit of a tie-in question, but I really wanted to utilize vintage clothing and give a bit of that vibe. But unfortunately, we had so many doubles for everything because they're in the back of a bike, they're on the back of a bike, they're in the back of a truck, they're in a car. Like there's so many doubles that when you're doing that, vintage, unfortunately, you just can't get the doubles that you need in doing that. So that was a bit unfortunate. So we were just trying to, make stuff, give it life and make it feel more lived in and loved in and
Mhm.
give it a bit more of that old school. Like I did a lot of that for Curtis, was trying to use vintage graphics for a lot of stuff.
Oh,
And
okay.
but
Yeah.
making like we would buy the vintage graphic and we would make the t-shirt to control it because he was always on his motorbike. And so
Mhm.
we had, was always doing something. So I couldn't get the one-offs, unfortunately. And so that was kind of a challenge in trying to how do you work that problem and give it a good feel, like everything doesn't have to feel so brand new. I wanted Alicia to feel a little bit more new and clean because of
Sure.
her financial status compared to a lot of other people. But that was one thing that was a bit of a, we could only use vintage here and there. Like the Kiara character had a few more vintage pieces here and there because she had some one-offs. Like anyone that could have a one-off, I would bring stuff in, and just be like, we can never double them there. I just got to make sure everyone knows this is not a caution we can repeat for that sequence because we don't
Mhm.
have multiple. So it's just it was a little bit of a game of Tetris as well to make sure that we're tracking everything so that they don't like, well, we love that t-shirt, let's reuse it. I'm like, no, can't.
Yeah, I know. I know because I did we did a live stream with a bunch of shoppers or buyers, and it's really a challenge unless you're using dead stock or something. Like one designer I spoke to, if you can get a hold of some dead stock, that's sometimes helpful, but that's doesn't always happen, right?
And it's not that and sometimes you can, but it's not right for your show. So it's like,
Yeah,
yeah. So it is
exactly.
tricky. It is tricky for sure.
Now, when you were doing your fittings, did the young cast have any say in what they wanted to wear? Like, did they say, "Oh no, I would no, someone my age would never wear that." Like, because I don't know, I'm in my 50s, I've got teenagers, so I let them dress themselves. So, did you have any of that happen during your fittings?
No, they can have no say. No, I'm just kidding. They had lots. They just do it. No, I'm kidding. They, of course, that's their
Yeah.
character. I'm very collaborative that way. I like to build the character together. I like to bring to the table what I think visually, and it always starts. I feel like, obviously I'm biased because I'm a costume designer, but I do really feel that character development starts in the fitting room, because now we're starting to put the pieces together. You've got the script, you've got the written word, but now we're using all the physical things to start bringing that character to life. And of course they have a say, and of course they have some input. And, this cast was really enthusiastic about everything and really open to trying things. There were some things that they're like, I'm going to try it. I can't imagine I'm going to like this, but because it's you, Leslie, I'm going to try it. And we did. There's a lot of moments where they come out and you're like, oh my gosh, that's no, take those off. And that's the fun part, is just trying things. I have this catchphrase with things. I'm always like, you don't have to buy it, but you do have to try it.
Oh,
And
I love that.
yeah,
Yes, that's really
so
good.
yeah, so it's
Because
just
you
like,
never know how it's going to look on you.
it is very true. And some people, there
Mhm.
was a lot of, to be really honest, there was a few things that made it to the show where people did not think they were going to like it at all. And then they put it on, they're like, oh my God, I love this. I'm sorry I said I was giving you such a hard time. I was like, told you my rule. You got to try it. That's it.
Yeah, I
And
think that's amazing. Well,
yeah,
also, you've got the whole show in mind as well. I mean, so they're looking at their own specific characters, but you've got the grand, the
I
grand
think,
thing
yeah,
in mind.
Motorheads was done during the writer's strike.
Oh
And
dear.
so what
Okay.
ended up happening was, in order to have the show done, they had made the cutoff before the strike happened, but they had to submit all the scripts. So it was really amazing that I had the entire series off the hop. So I knew everything that was happening. And so that made me following the character arcs and what's happening and being able to, you know, create all the aesthetics that have a trajectory throughout the whole series a little bit easier, because you don't always get them all at the same time. You might get a few ahead, and then you can go so far and then you have to wait for the next batch. And that was one of the things that was really great as a creative, to be able to have all the scripts right off the go.
Yeah, and actually I can segue into this then. So did any character go through a big style change during the season that you can think offhand?
Hmm.
Harris, I think in terms of his
Harris, I would love
character,
to, yeah,
I
Harris.
kind of felt like I did see some changes in him. Especially, I love, by the way, I love that they sort of, what is it, subverted our expectations. Is that the expression? He's your typical sort of dude bro, jock, jerk kind of thing, wealthy guy. But I love that there was so much nuance with him. So, did you feel there was a bit of an arc with
Definitely
his
Harris.
clothes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he definitely, so he's the typical rich kid of the story, silver platter, has everything, has the Porsche. He's kind of like the bully kind of guy. My catchphrase, like one of my pitches for him was that every guy wants to be him and every girl wants to be with him. And it was sort of, he's the elite. I really likened him to this character in John Hughes' movie 16 Candles.
Oh my gosh, I love 16 Candles, of
Yeah,
course.
so he
Yeah.
was the guy that, she was falling for at the end. And he also had a Porsche, by the way. And so, you know, he just was that guy that had all that going for him, but doesn't always see what's right in front of him. Sometimes, he's got the hot girlfriend, she's popular, she's this, but then he's like messing around with Brooke on the side, who's like bubbly and effervescent. She's just kind of always charmed by him. He's like a snake charmer, right? It's like, ooh, just listen
Yeah.
to the music and you'll sort of do as I say. And I think that when, but he's also, people maybe didn't realize, like, his mother died and he was really conflicted emotionally and he didn't really have any outlet for that. And so, there's some of the lines where he's racing, like he almost wants to die just to see, like, he has zero fear.
Mhm.
So he's dangerous, because he just doesn't care. And so when we see him go from being typical rich boy and your polo shirt and all this thing, and he had all the nice gear, right? Because he's got the money, like all the F1 formula racing type stuff and all the stuff that is very expensive that other kids can't have. He's got all the gear. And then we start bringing him back down a little bit. He's going to try to go a little bit more edgy because he's kind of going with a different crowd. And
Yeah, and he's got the purple car as
yeah,
opposed to the blue Porsche,
like he
right?
just gives his Porsche away. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
like, I don't need it. So yeah, I would definitely say Harris. I think that Marcel, in some ways, has a bit of a,
Oh, I love Marcel.
Marcel was one of
Yeah.
my favorite characters off the hop because of his, he just has this eternal optimism. Like, you know, he chooses to only see the good, which is so amazing.
Mhm.
When people are like, oh, here comes Marcel, it's like, okay, guys, maybe not this party. I'll catch you at the next one. He's like that guy. Like he just chooses to see the positive in everything. And he really is such a true friend. And that's when we see, when Zach loses his car and, well, it does, he blows the engine in it. And so the car, everything that Marcel has been saving, every scrap of money to get the one thing he has. And then, Zach is a little bit like, oh, well, and he's just, that really hurt. He's very deeply hurt because he's like, I thought you were like my friend. I thought we were pals here. And so watching that whole relationship progress over the season was really fun too. But I think he had a little bit of, he needed to be a little bit off the wall in some ways, but also so relatable and tangible in so many ways. So I was
Mhm.
really hoping that that was captured with what we did with him, having a lot of fun with some of the graphic tees that were just a little bit off, not quite.
Yeah, like I kind of feel like I'd be Marcel. Like I'm Marcel, I'd be the one working in the diner. So I feel like I'm like he's sort of I'm looking at it things through his lens in a way, even though I'm a
Hey,
female.
he's a
Yeah.
great lens to look through if you ask me.
Yeah, yeah.
He's such a good guy.
I love the aesthetic also of the diner. I love the uniforms for that too and the color palette and everything. Did you work with a production designer to sort of come up with those uniforms? They have sort of a vintage feel to them.
We did. So Kate Ferry was our production designer, and we did work closely for a lot of the stuff in the show because there was so much color. My original design, my original pitch for there was bowling shirts. I
Oh
really
yeah,
wanted
yeah. I
bowling
love
shirts.
that.
Yeah, I really, really, and we made some up. We did our own graphics. We did all the stuff, and the actual fun fact for all you fans out there, the original diner that we had worked towards got changed last minute. So the
Oh my
uniforms got
God.
changed last minute. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But it felt like a 1950s diner with the milkshakes and everything.
It had a very
Yeah,
good undercurrent, but it wasn't
yeah.
the original,
Okay.
interiors and
Well,
everything else. They
yeah,
really
and then this is the thing that happens, right? Like, I hear this all the time.
yeah, so
Things
then
that end up on the
then
cutting room floor.
it was more that they felt that they wanted to have some nostalgia in the actual establishment, but that because Bandit Technologies has bought it,
Mhm.
they're trying to rebrand stuff, and so that it's in transition. So they wanted to have a bit more of a current costume and parts of the aesthetic of the interior of the diner had started to get upgraded, but some of it hadn't. So they really wanted to play showing that it's a town in flux, if you will.
Okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. Um, so were there any little costume details or Easter eggs or things like that someone like myself or the average viewer might not have noticed, but you put in there? Like maybe did you put a bowling shirt into the set at some point, or like was there anything like that that you did that we might not know about?
Well, did I? Well, I mean, I had someone. To be honest, I just had so much fun, and we were doing like little accessories with the cast that were symbolic to them in real
Mhm.
life, like so parts of their real personality or parts of things that they like. That, of course, our typical viewer probably wouldn't pick up on. But those are nuances I really like to do with the cast. The shoes were a really big deal, right? Like high school, like kicks are
Mhm.
a big thing. And so we were having so much fun with the shoes and really making sure that I worked really hard on that to be, like each character had to have their own specific shoe of what that was. I think that, you know, just really for me, I don't know. I don't, looking back, did I do any Easter eggs? I don't know if I would say I did Easter eggs as much as really just trying to give really independent touches to each character to help them, you know, be that character. And then what does that mean for them and who they are? I think that, with our friend Caitlin, she also had a little bit of a metamorphosis. Like she's so anti-establishment and so anti-dance and so anti
Mhm.
this. And I think, it was such a really beautiful moment at the prom when she comes down and she actually has a prom dress, like a proper prom dress on that we tricked out to be in Caitlin vibes, of course.
Yeah.
We augmented some of that stuff. But things like that were, playing. So it wasn't Easter eggs as much as really making nuances that would resonate with that person for their character.
Um, So I'm going to let you go shortly, but what is one thing that people might not realize about the work that goes into creating a show, costumes for a show like this? I mean, we touched on breakdown and we touched on working with stunts and bad weather. Is there anything else that people may, watch it and just, I don't know, not take everything at face value, but you have a little thing that you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much work.
I think overall, to be honest, when making a television show, it's time. We
Mhm.
don't have the time that like I'm so glad and so proud that it does not show that we don't have the time on camera, but things like doing a clearance, when you're putting stuff in to get cleared, it's a process. So it doesn't happen overnight. And you have to then pivot and work around something. It's just having the time to get everything ready, fit on actors that have super duper heavy schedules, like getting them. And then also the alteration process, getting all washed and laundered so nothing looks brand new unless very specifically supposed to, and trying to get everything done in a timely manner to get it to the set, to get on camera. And I think that, people don't realize how fast TV moves. And when you're shooting, like luckily when they see the finished product, no, but it's just the time. Like, I watched this, well, this isn't about me, but I watched a really great interview for, I don't know if you've seen the mini, like the limited series Shogun, but
Oh yeah, I love Shogun. With
so
Carlos.
it was exactly, I got to
Yeah.
meet him this past winter and like, oh my gosh, I was just like dying over this man because I loved it. Like the
And
detail,
he's very handsome.
yeah, everything that
I
went
went
into
up to him and I'm like, oh my God, Carlos, you're so handsome. I just have to say it. I don't care.
everything that went into that show and listening
This
to
was
all the
stunning.
nuances and the
Yeah.
details. And it's TV. And it's this,
Mhm.
again, it was the time, how they had to get that and get every detail right. And, that whole process. And you think of like a big magnitude of that. For me on Motorheads, it was a little easier because it wasn't a show of that nature, like when I do handmaids or things of that nature, where it's like building. But it's the same thing. Time is just I think every designer would say that there's almost never enough time for what you want to do, especially when things are going to be aged and broken down. You have to add that into the mix of just shopping it, fitting it, altering it, the approvals. It's just it's always time.
Yeah, I did a live stream on the weekend with a costume shopper, and we were talking about it. I feel like you can tell me this is true because you've grown up in the industry. Does it seem like there's less time now than there used to be, like 20 years ago? It just seems like everything is so fast. Like, when did you shoot this show? I bet you shot it last year, and it's already out, right?
We shot Motorheads a year and a half ago, actually. So
Okay,
it was a little bit longer of a turnaround to come out.
sure.
Um, I do think things have sped up. I think that's technology. I think now that we have, everyone's got these things and
Yep.
it's like everything, it's like it's the now thing. Everyone wants everything now because everyone's reachable. And the process of doing things is a little different now. And so we're just in a culture at a time where everything is now. And so I think that that's maybe part of it. I don't know, but it just does seem that the time definitely sped up. We don't have as much of it. And the process of how things happen is, yeah, definitely, I think, yeah, things have changed for sure. I'm not sure exactly why I blame technology. I mean, technology is great for certain things.
Yeah, and the
Also,
fact that you say we're accessible now, all
yeah,
at any hour. One of the designers I was speaking to, she told me like, she was expected to be like on hand at like 1 in the morning. Like, I mean, like when she's sleeping. So
that
it,
is true. It happens with this.
yeah.
If you have a phone or a watch that
Mhm.
connects everything. Listen, when I started in this business, I mean, not to date myself, but here I go, is we used to have to sign out a roll of quarters from accounting and you had a pager. And when
Yeah.
you were at the mall, somebody would, your pager would go off, call off, and it would just be like this, like, do, 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 call office. And then you'd have
Yeah.
to go. And one thing I always remember is at Yorkdale Mall here in Toronto. It's a very big shopping mall
Great mall.
here. They used to have this bank of, I don't know, I want to say like 20 uh payphones.
Yeah,
And
you don't see those like rows and rows of payphones.
no, and they happened to be near a set of washrooms. And so
Mhm.
you could, at any time of the day, you could go there and you'd run into other costume people doing the same thing. Their pager went off. Okay, I'm going to go take my bathroom break and make the call. Like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I was like, now you
In
don't
a
see
way, it
that.
was good because then it made you go to the bathroom.
Yeah. So now it's just like you don't stop for anything because you got a phone. Like, why do you need to stop?
Yeah, I know because some of the shoppers or buyers I was talking to, like they live in their car basically. They're in their
Yeah.
car all the time,
It's
and they have their water and they have their phone. That's how. Now, okay. The big question is: there going to be a season 2? Are you allowed to even talk about that?
Is there going to be? I mean, hey, they always talked about it when I was working on the show.
Mhm.
They were always talking about how they had visions of longevity for the show. I really couldn't say. The show did take a little bit longer to get edited and come out and debut. So I'm not sure. I don't know. Isn't that what? Such a great
Oh my
question.
gosh, it'll be awful. I really hope it is. I'm fingers crossed because we were left with a cliffhanger, and
It's
I
a
don't want to give any
good
spoilers.
cliffhanger too.
Yeah, really good.
Oh my
But
gosh.
anyways, I just want to see what happens next with these characters and the story. One of the things I was going to say that I really enjoyed about the show is, I mean, it could have just been sort of a coming of age story, but there's so many really cool storylines happening simultaneously, and so it really grabs you, it really hooks you. Kind of like when you were saying you were reading the script. So I have to find out what happened.
I think that again goes to such great writing is that there were a lot of storylines going on, but they were never competing and you could follow them all. And
Yeah.
they weren't rushing so that you do feel invested in each character, which I think is a really, kudos to Johnny Norris because that's a real strong skill set to have where people want to stay invested and know more. And as I say, right from the moment when I read the scripts, that it hooked me and I wanted to read more.
Yeah. So I'm fingers crossed we're going to have a season 2 and you get to come back and do some more fabulous costumes for this show.
Let's hope.
um,
Let's hope.
well, Leslie, before I let you go, do you want to tell me if there's anything you're working on now? Because you said it was a year and a half ago that this show came out, but you also, of course, have The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, we
I
just
The
I just
season
finished.
finale.
Yeah, I finished season 6.
Mhm.
The season finale, series finale of this
Series
show,
finale.
season 6, just aired, and I'm currently working on a new show called The Testaments, which is the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale.
Wonderful. Now, was the original source material written by Margaret Atwood as well, or?
Yes, this is her
Oh,
next book,
oh,
and
amazing.
yep. So it's Gilead lives on.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you so much for spending time with us. And also, I hope you come back when, you have your next show and we can chat more because it's
I
been
would
such a
absolutely love
pleasure.
to. It's been a real pleasure. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And thanks for everybody who came out today to watch our video and our interview about Motorheads with costume design by Leslie Kavanagh. And it is on Amazon Prime. And I think actually you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all of the episodes were put out at the same time. I did watch it over about a week.
They dropped them all, so
You
there's
dropped
no
them all. There you
waiting.
go.
You
That's
can
the
you can binge
expression.
watch that. You can binge watch it.
You can binge watch it over the weekend. Exactly.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Leslie.
Thank you so much.